Hi, this is Jeff.
And this is Steve.
From the 12A Podcast,
where we talk entertainment and movies.
Under a budget.
Listen to us at foureyedradio.com.
And now, enjoy our friends on this next podcast.
Hey listeners, Eric here, also known as Trekkie B47, from the Starfleet Escape Podcast and the Ranger Command Power Hour. The more phenomenal episode you're about to listen to is brought to you by Raven Designs, illustration and design that fit your personality. For samples and inquiries, visit ravencruise.com.
Bond. James Bond. Shaken, not stirred.
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
For your eyes only, darling.
I never joke about my word 007.
For England, James?
Come in, Univex. James Bond here.
Am I going to have a problem with you, Bond?
Allow me to introduce myself.
You're that secret agent! That English secret agent from England!
No, you're cleverer than you look.
Still better than looking cleverer than you are.
My God, what's Bond doing?
I think he's attempting re-entry, sir.
007 reporting for duty.
Hello, the name's Berkeley, Ziggy Berkeley from Cinema on the Rocks, and with me is Eric Dewey from Socially Awkward Studios, and you are listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on the Four-Eyed Radio Network. That's right, you're listening to the show where we talk about Bond, James Bond, Bondage, James Bondage, all things related to James Bond 007. And today we're going to be talking about the only two Ian Fleming novels that we have not yet touched on, and just by happenstance, we could conceivably call this the Abomination episode for Ian Fleming novels, I think.
Definitely for the one. The other, I guess I built it up to be so bad in my head that maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I'm still not going to qualify it as good, and we'll discuss it, but one of them for sure, just why. But we'll get into that.
Yep, and we will also be finding our fate as a special treat for the audience after we've discussed these two books. We'll be reading through the Find Your Fate book, Strike It Deadly by Barbara and Scott Siegel. For those who may remember the last time we did something like this, I read the book, and when we got to the Choose Your Own Adventure sections, Eric was the one who decided to find our fate to see if James Bond would live or die. Now we're going to do it the other way around. Eric will read, and I will find our fate. And we will see if I can beat Eric's record of killing James Bond in two choices.
I'm very proud of that record. I'm hoping that that you're not able to defeat me, but we'll see.
But before I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I wonder if they even write the book in a way that you can do it in less than two choices. I'm almost surprised that they even wrote it in a way that you could kill him in only two choices. And I'm proud of myself that I found those two choices.
That was pretty impressive work on your part, I must say. But before we get started on the books, I do want to take a moment to mark the unfortunate passing of Mr. Richard Kiel, who died this past week. James Bond fans know him as Jaws, of course, though he had many other roles. Most recently, he did a voice in the film Tangled. He was also in a very well-known Twilight Zone episode and, of course, had a much greater career than that. But we will always know him and love him as Jaws, the James Bond henchman who ended up turning good, much to Eric's chagrin.
He found love and decided to be a happy man instead of a mean man with a metal mouth. The Jaws on Jaws action, that's some amazing stuff right there. Jaws versus a shark. That was fantastic stuff, and I will definitely remember him. So, sorry to see you go. It's a sad day.
Indeed. So, moment of silence to mark the passing of Richard Kiel, which, of course, the truncated silence on our recording software will get rid of, so just assume we had one. But, moving on, we are now going to talk about the only two Ian Fleming James Bond novels we have not yet discussed. The first of which is The Spy Who Loved Me, and this is a very, very special novel.
It's special, all right. It went to press on the short bus.
Yeah. This novel takes place in between Thunderball and On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And in fact, the very fact that it takes place in between the two and some of the circumstances you hear about rather negates something you hear about in Her Majesty's Secret Service. But in any case, this was an experiment. And it was an experiment which even Ian Fleming decided was a great and massive failure. In fact, when Ian Fleming sold the rights to his remaining novels to Eon Productions, he sold the rights to The Spy Who Loved Me with the very specific instructions that they could only use the title and they could not use the story.
Which, as far as I'm concerned, is A-OK in my book. Because the movie by the name The Spy Who Loved Me, much better than this book.
Yeah, they bear no resemblance to each other, though Cubby Broccoli and Company did do a little bit of lifting. You can actually see where the character of Jaws comes from in this book, but it is a very different character once you get past the metal mouth. And the story itself is wow.
The story itself is almost felt to me like this should have been included in one of the short stories. It felt truncated to me, except for, the part that was actually any type of action whatsoever and the part that actually involved James Bond in any way, shape, or form felt very truncated and just a little piece of a story more than an entire story in and of itself. The rest of the book was just pages and pages and pages of garbage that we did not need at all. This woman's entire life story, as told by her, that's the weird part about this book. We've already discussed that Fleming was not the strongest author when it came to writing women. And then he decided, I don't know where he got it in his mind, that he's like, well, maybe I'd get better if I wrote an entire book from the perspective of a woman. It did not work. It was quite obvious in many places that this is a man writing what he thinks a woman is thinking, and he's wrong. Very, very wrong in many cases.
It's not only is it a man, it is a dude bro. Let's face it. Even though the term did not exist at the time, it is a dude bro writing from a woman's perspective, except, he writes the story in the voice of what he thinks is a woman, and it's pretty easy to see why Cosmo didn't buy this. I don't know if he tried to sell it to Cosmo. It's just, if anything, this seems like a continuation of the experiment that he started with short stories like Quantum of Solace, where he wanted to try and get away from Bond a little bit to see if he could mix things up, because as we know, he was kind of back and forth on writing the Bond character, even though he was gung-ho on selling the hell out of him. But what he does here is we start with meeting this woman, Vivienne Michel, who is originally from Quebec, and then after deciding that a strict Catholic upbringing is just not for her, she ends up being shipped off to England, where she goes to finishing school. Is there such a thing as finishing school anymore? I'm sure there is, but...
There probably is. It's probably one of those hoity-toity, you go to prep school and then finishing school and nothing in between. I don't understand what you were prepping for and what you're finishing from, but somewhere in there is the actual school, I suppose.
So she goes off to England for finishing school, where we find out such awkward things as how she first had sex, which is basically date rape, and how she slut-shamed herself as a result of that, and even before. So, yeah, Ian, you get real big points. And then how after all of this, she decides she's going to escape to America, and the way she's going to do it is she's going to take a trip down the East Coast by a Vespa. Not a Vesper, a Vespa, as in the scooter.
Yep.
And then she's going to just try and live in a new life, new start in Florida. Oh, boy, she could have picked a better place. But anyway.
But she doesn't know. All she's probably seen are postcards of Florida.
Hopefully she made it as far as Miami and didn't just stop in Panama City. If Godzilla went across Panama City, it would be urban renewal. Sorry to any of our fans in Panama City, but come on, if you live there, you know what I'm talking about.
Now, I will say that one thing that did interest me about the way this book was written, I'm trying to look for any of the good in this whole thing, and I did find it quite interesting the way it was kind of separated into sections, it felt to me, where the first section was all about her talking about her. It was all me, this is me, this is what I've done, this is who I am, and this is what's leading up to current events, where we go into another section where it's almost entirely about describing these two thugs that show up to be the villains of the story, so to speak. Not the master villains, more like the henchmen who actually do the dirty work. But and then it transitions into the final section, which is all about Bond. So it's kind of like, we're talking about me, and then we're talking about these guys, and then we're talking about Bond. And it's a very distinct, you can feel when it switches over from, okay, she's done talking about herself, now she's describing these guys. And then she's done describing these guys, and now she's talking about Bond all the time. And that transition was kind of interesting. Like, I liked that aspect of it. It just wasn't very well done, unfortunately. But I liked the idea of those transitions.
Yeah, in some ways, the structure of the experiment reminded me of another experiment that he did that worked damn well. That was From Russia with Love. Because if you remember, that book, too, started off not from Bond's perspective. Bond doesn't even show up until halfway through. Instead, you're getting it from the Soviet perspective, from Tatiana, a woman he wrote much better, even though he still wrote her like a dubro. And so you had a similar experiment. It just went much better the first time.
Yeah, definitely went better that time. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was a better story there. In this one, like I said, the actual story, it seems very short and very compact compared to how long the book was. And it wasn't a long book. I mean, this was one of his shorter books, but it could easily, if they had cut the entire part about describing this woman's past, and just gotten to the part where Bond shows up, and maybe a little bit before Bond shows up, just to show, okay, hey, this girl is here and she's in trouble. Now Bond shows up. It could have easily been a short story, and probably would have been much better.
I would say it definitely would have been much better as a short story. It wouldn't have been, I don't think, a great short story, but it would have been better. Mm-hmm. And it would definitely have had to have been told from Bond's perspective. Because, again, he just does not get the female voice of Vivienne Michel at all. Victor Michel, maybe, but not Vivienne Michel. There is no Victor Michel, by the way. I just made that up. Just, go with it. One of the things I do find interesting, because like you, I'm trying to pick out some of the good here before we get to slaughtering it, is that as she's taking her trip down the East Coast, she's describing how she has to plan and what she all needs, what she's doing, and goes into pretty minute detail, which would be boring, except for the fact that it lets you know just how much inflation has gone up since his story was written in 1959. Because she's talking about working for 2 full weeks and getting paid $30 for it. She's talking about when she goes to all these tourist traps, they cost $1 a piece. When's the last time you went to a tourist trap that cost $1?
Yeah, I think the most expensive thing she pointed out was that some of the one of the hotels she stayed at was like $8 a night. And
that was expensive.
Yeah, that sounded expensive compared to all the other prices she was giving. So I was like, okay, she was treating herself that night. She was staying at the dang Ritz or something for $8 a night.
$8 instead of $5.
Exactly. So yeah, you did. She started out with what, $1,000 or something like that, and that was her entire stake to get on scooter from Canada to Florida with the intention of taking a long meandering trip and staying at hotels every night along the way.
Yeah, it's just, and of course she's got the sharp suit because she has to talk about her fashion.
Yes.
The sporty glasses with the little fur line ribbing, But as she takes this trip, she decides to go on one too many tourist trap spots. And so it cost her a whole $30. And that really crimped her budget. So she has to figure out a way to get this money back. And so when she stops by this cheap hotel, she's offered the chance to, hey, why don't you stay on as our counter girl for 2 weeks? We'll pay you the $30 plus room and board, and then you can be on your way. And she's like, hey, this will bring me back on budget. That's great. So a month's expenses was $30.
I do have to point out what she agreed to after the married manager of the hotel attempted to sneak into her room at night to rape her. And she still agreed to stay on with them for 2 weeks for $30.
Yeah, way to go, Ian.
There was a lot of rape theme in this book. I mean, right from the very beginning, she's talking about her very first, losing her virginity to this guy who basically did the typical dude bro. I mean, Ian wrote this guy perfectly. This was the guy who's like, "Oh, I love you. I want to be with you forever, but I want to be physical with you because that's how we express." I mean, he's typical, teenage guy stuff. This is how they think and how they act to get what they want, and that was written very well. Her reaction.
It was gross to read, but yes, it was written perfectly.
Yeah, it was slimy and ew to read, but yeah, and so he finally gets what he wants, and then of course vanishes as teenage boys do sometimes. So note to you teenage girls out there: yes, teenage boys will say anything. They will say just about anything they have to try and get in your pants, and will not live up to a lot of it afterwards. So just be aware.
And then, of course, after she recovers from this, she then ends up working for a boss who's a very kindly man, sure, but then he gets dumped and she feels sorry for him. So after initially resisting advances, she suddenly becomes his sexual partner, and all is well until he gets her pregnant, and it is obviously her fault. So obviously she needs to be fired, though he is being very decent about it because he will pay for her to fly to Switzerland for the abortion.
Of course. Because he's good that way. Because he's German, he's very efficient. So, yeah, it's that whole the first few chapters when she's describing all of this stuff. It's really tough to read because it is so obvious that this woman is not being written by anyone who understands females at all. And I'm not claiming that I could write it better because I'm, first of all, not an author, and second of all, not a woman. But it's bad enough that even I recognize that it's bad, which means it's pretty bad.
Yeah, and it's made even worse by the fact that every time something happens to her that is bad, she blames herself. And she not only blames herself, she blames herself and whines about it.
Yes.
So it's just, Fleming just can't help but make her the weakest, just lowest he can possibly think of. And this just is not good. This is not someone anyone conceivably could want to read about.
Yeah, she's just not a very strong character at all. And considering that she's not only supposed to be the lead character in the story, but actually the narrator of the story as well, it makes it a weak story just right from the beginning. It doesn't even matter what happens. You're already thinking about this, right from the very beginning. You're thinking this girl is weak and just not a good person, like not a complete person. And so it really makes it hard to, later on you're supposed to be feeling for her. You're supposed to be sorry for her and want her to survive, and you can't really bring yourself to care very much.
Yeah, if you want anything for her, it's therapy. And you kind of wonder what brings James Bond into any sort of attraction for her until you remember that the James Bond of Ian Fleming's universe is still the defender of puppies and kittens, because he is. However crude or rude or kind of rapey he is, he's also a defender of puppies and kittens.
But that's okay, because according to Vivian Michael herself, she says all women love semi-rape. That line just jumped out at me and slapped me in the face, and it stung. I was like, did I really just read that? Like, Fleming has written some things before that were questionable. A lot of stuff regarding race we've talked about in the past where it's like, ooh, geez, easy there, buddy. It's almost nothing compared to when he talks about women and sex. It's that line right there. It's like, oh, come on now. Really, guy?
Harkening back to Casino Royale, where James Bond relished the sweet tang of rape. That's a direct quote. Every time he had sex with Vesper Lynd. And now, here we have Vivian Michelle saying how all women long for it. Ian Fleming, we love the character that you started to create, but you are a pig.
Yeah, yes. So I would imagine, and I'm not a woman, so I can't back this up with any official data or anything, but I'm going to go ahead and say that not all women love semi-rape or any type of rape, semi or otherwise. Yes, I'm sure some, everybody's got different tastes, but as a blanket statement about all women, I think it's completely off the mark, like beyond ridiculous.
Plus, just the way it's stated, just the flat-out dude-bro-ishness of it. Again, it brings you out of the character if you ever could get into this character. Yeah. It's just like, no, this is not a woman and never was. She pees standing up in a urinal. I mean, it's not a woman. And frankly, it's just so painful to read this character that if you decide to start reading this, I recommend drinking while you do it. I am not even kidding there. I strongly recommend drinking while you do it. If you make it to the portion where James Bond shows up, I congratulate you.
If you haven't succumbed to alcohol poisoning by the time James Bond actually appears in the story, you have a liver of steel. Congratulations.
Because I'll be honest, this book sucks. This is the second time I've read it. I doubt I will ever read it again. The first time I read it was on a bus trip that I ended up taking because the train company was on strike. I was supposed to be taking a train trip. But it's a terrible book. It really is. And you only read this if you are a James Bond completist and absolutely have to see everything that Fleming did with him. And what he does with him here is tosses him in a story you do not expect James Bond to be in at all.
No.
And the way that James Bond ends up meeting the whiny and unrealistic Vivienne Michel is that when she decides to take this job as the counter girl at this motel, she's now there for the very last night, and the manager who tried to rape her before and even his wife decide to be really cruel to her. They've been mean to her the last couple days, and they tell her, okay, we're taking off, we're leaving, you're going to be here to close up shop. And our boss, Mr. Sanguinetti, Fleming's not very subtle with these names, is he?
I wonder if he's got anything to do with the mob. I don't know.
If anyone knows any sort of etymology of words whatsoever, first you have Sanguinetti as a guy from New Jersey. I mean, a name like that, of course he's a mobster. And sanguine deriving from blood. Gosh, could he be a bad guy?
I don't know. I really don't know.
So Mr. Sanguinetti is supposed to show up tomorrow to collect the keys. Now, this is after Fleming has very nicely told us that the business has been really, really bad lately, and that there's no way this place could possibly be making any real money. Now, I don't know about you, but even when I read this the first time, I pretty much knew exactly what was going to be happening. What about you? Were you caught off guard at all?
No, it was pretty obvious. I mean, yeah, they're going to take, okay, so this girl's worked for you for 2 weeks total, and all of a sudden she's in charge of closing up shop, and they made a point, she mentioned that business had been really slow. She wondered how they could even afford to keep her on and why they needed to keep her there, because business had been just so slow. And then you find out that it's run by this Sanguinetti guy out of the big city, and he'll be coming up to close up, and he'll be bringing her money and all that stuff. I'm like, just leave right now. This does not sound like a good plan for you, but you knew she wasn't going to.
Of course not, because as Fleming has shown us, she makes dumb choices all the time. So what ends up happening, of course, is that she is going to be set up for an insurance scam where the place is going to be burned down. She's going to be blamed for it, possibly after being beaten up and raped. And, no one will notice. They'll just say, oh, yeah, she set the place on fire by knocking over a hurricane lamp.
Yep.
Oh, I guess I'll just collect my insurance money now. Thank you. Now, to accomplish this, of course, Mr. Sanguinetti does not come down himself, but rather, the night before the place is supposed to close, during a horrible, dark, and stormy night, because why not? We're using so many other dumb cliches, might as well bring them all. We have two quote-unquote insurance adjusters show up. And their names are, I'm not making them up, I promise, Slugsy and Horror.
Yeah. Two stand-up gentlemen, if ever I've heard names for just genuine salt-of-the-earth folks. Slugsy and Horror.
Yeah. One of whom is because, of course, anyone who's bad can't be physically perfect or, anything like that. So one of them suffers from alopecia totalis, which the rest of us know as being completely bald from head to toe. Hair doesn't grow anywhere. No, not even there.
Not there, not anywhere. Yep.
No, and this would end up being the model for Shandor in the Spy Who Loved Me movie. And then the other one has big, giant metal teeth. I can't imagine who he would inspire later.
Now, to be fair, they didn't give him super strong metal jaws or anything like that. It was just, more of she noticed it because it was like, oh, those are cheap metal caps that they would get in some bad place, but it was obviously a physical feature that was vivid and needed to be pointed out.
Yes, and he talked as well.
Too dang much, I'll tell you that. But
yeah, because this is one of those, and we get this several times. In fact, we get this any time Ian Fleming takes us to the United States. You can tell that he has a secret love for the U.S., which, good for him there, but he doesn't really understand it. And one of the things that he does is when he comes up with an American villain, they all talk like the Bugs Bunny caricature of a gangster. I mean, you can hear the bad impersonation of Edward G. Robinson. And I'm not saying that they sound like Edward G. Robinson, because they don't. They sound like Bugs Bunny trying to be Edward G. Robinson. And they're all telling, yeah, see? Yeah. And just the worst, most hideous, overblown molasses slang. Just, they can't stop it. Yeah, see, we're in the joint now. See, yeah, and it's Quaintance for you. Quaintance.
Quaintance. Sorry. Yeah, it's bad. It's really, really bad. The characterization of these people is subpar at the very best, and it's just. It's really, really bad. It's I don't even know how else to describe it.
Yeah, it's just Goomba extraordinaire. And of course, after they get her to make them some food, because, woman's got to be put in the kitchen, because that's what they do. They're considering raping her and going about trying, but then there's a knock at the door. Who could it be? Please tell me. Finally, James Bond shows up.
Yeah, that's essentially how we introduce Bond into the story. He just kind of happens to show up at this place. He literally got a flat tire, and that was the closest place to him when that happened. And now, he decided he wanted to stop by.
Let's be honest here. James Bond gets a flat tire, goes to a cheap Jersey motel or a New York motel, and ends up in this situation. Doesn't it strike you as more likely that if James Bond got a flat tire out in the middle of nowhere, he'd end up in a farmer's daughter joke?
What I don't understand is he said he drove for like a mile on the rim of the tire to pull over and go to this hotel, where he then wanted to stay the night instead of just changing the. He said he's got a spare. He talked about he could have changed the tire at any time. Like, you get a flat tire, you pull over, you change it, and you keep going. Like, unless you don't have a spare, that's the only issue. And so I don't...
Unless you're me, is you pull over, you call AAA, make them change a damn tire, and then go.
Either way, you're not stopping. You're not driving a mile or so on the rim to go to a motel where you then just decide, I'll just stay the night, and then worry about the tire later. There was a lot of... The other thing I didn't like about this is that even when you did introduce Bond... And I get that, okay, maybe he's between missions, so maybe he's not 100% on his game, but he was really kind of a bumbling idiot in a lot of this. Made a lot of mistakes in this particular story, and now that could be attributed to maybe that's how she was recalling things. But no, they really make him sound like he's not on his game at all, and don't really give any explanation for that other than that he's just not.
No, you really don't. Though I do want to point out one thing, very important, and I'm sure all of our listeners will understand. When he first shows up, and of course the mobsters are idiots too, so instead of just shooting him and getting it over with, and then doing what they were going to do with Vivienne and then setting the place on fire, and everything would have been just fine. But no, they decide to play along, sit there and grumble while Vivienne makes him some food in the kitchen. And they have a little discussion, and she says, "It's so wonderful you're here. It's an absolute miracle." And Bond replies on page 147, "Yes, it was a stroke of luck. At least I hope so. Can't count the chickens yet."
You went through that entire book looking for any chicken reference, didn't you? I approve. Yeah, and that's almost the bright spot of the book. the fact that we get a chicken reference. It's just really bad. I mean, and he even points out, what makes it worse is not just that he's making the mistakes, but that he insists on pointing out his mistakes as he makes them, as if it's somehow better, that he at least realizes, like, oh, I should have, you know what? I knew that we were going to probably get into some trouble at night. That's probably when they were going to try to do something. I probably should have gone ahead and, changed that tire so I'd have a quick getaway. But instead, my car's still sitting out front with a flat tire. Okay, so you've realized your mistake. You've told us all about it. So now we know you're an idiot too. Why? There's so much stuff. And then, you see him, the typical Bond, such a great shot any other time, except when it counts, evidently. Then he can't hit the broadside of a barn suddenly.
Yeah, he's afraid of these two basically level 2 Goombas. In a video game, these would be trash mobs.
But as he points out, they look like they're real professionals in their business. What?
Yeah,
for real?
And this is something that Fleming does all the time when he mentions mobsters, is he goes over the top. I mean, just oversells whenever he talks about American mobster, how tough they are and how much worse they are than the Germans, the Nazis, the Soviets. It's like, really? I mean, I get these are guys you don't mess with, but if you're James Bond, I expect these kinds of people to be breakfast. That's what I expect for between James Bond and these people.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it should be, because you've got a professionally trained assassin of the British Secret Service versus two relatively low-level thugs. I mean, these are guys that are sent out by an American mob boss to go burn a hotel down. That's their job, to go burn a hotel down. That's all they have to do. It's not exactly like they're trusting him with something super special. They're supposed to go out there, make sure that the girl who is supposed to be in charge of the hotel gets killed and left behind with it looking like she started the fire, but essentially their job is just to go burn a hotel down. It's not like he entrusted them with, nuclear codes or something. This is not something that special of a job. They make it into more than that, because then they get there and they're like, oh, she's pretty, so I guess we're going to have to, torture and rape her first, because, that's just what we do as American thugs, evidently.
Yeah, and you have Bond, who, just like them, because they should have just shot him and been done with it, they could have. He, in turn, won't just shoot them and be done with it. No, because they're so tough, he's got to bide his time and make things infinitely worse.
Yeah. And she even, again, we get pointed out this fact. She even asked him, why didn't you just shoot them? You've got a gun. Why didn't you just shoot them right then? And he's like, oh, I could never do it in cold blood. How is it cold blood? They've been trying to rape and murder her all night. How is that cold blood at this point? Just shoot them and be done with it. But then, of course, the story would be over and we would rejoice. I mean, we would be sad that there wasn't more story to be told.
And I just find it incredulous whenever I hear or read Fleming say in Bond's voice that he doesn't like murdering cold blood. And then he goes out and does it. And
well, did you miss the part where you created an assassin character? This man is supposed to have a license to kill. You've created an assassin who doesn't want to kill in cold blood? What?
Now, maybe this is how he sleeps at night, because, of course, we do know that Ian Fleming has a real background in British intelligence, was an officer himself, knew zillions of other officers, and maybe this is how they told themselves that it was okay, because they never killed in cold blood, even though they did. So maybe there's that psychology going, but it just... And this is actually what Roger Moore, in his memoir, latched onto in his characterization of Bond, is he decided that his Bond didn't like killing in cold blood. And he latched onto Ian Fleming's lines wherever he said that to make that justification. And yet, in Fleming's books, he does it all the time. In fact, he just comes back from a mission, and this is the most interesting part of the book. The chapter where he says why he's there in the first place is that he was in Canada tracking down a Spectre agent and took care of that business, and instead of flying to Washington, he decided to drive. So that was it. That's why he's there.
Yeah, convenient. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense in many situations, and that's what makes it so frustrating of a story, is the fact that the little bit of the story that's there to try to make sense of everything else just doesn't. And so you're left very unsatisfied by the whole thing.
And, of course, the continuity problem is in the next book, Bond thinks it's a waste of time because Spectre is gone, and yet here he's been on this mission to find a live Spectre agent. So Spectre has obviously been a going concern. But again, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Spectre is gone, and it's just Blofeld and some other people that were remnants of it. Make up your mind, dude. Just pick one. Of course, this book never happened.
Or they're not. Come on. Yeah, it's just a really rough story from beginning to end. It's hard to get through because the first part is just her whining about her life story, basically. And she comes off as just whiny and annoying, and it's really hard to get through enough of the book to even get to anything entertaining. You know, when Slugsy and Horror show up, at least you've got a little bit of fun because you're like, oh, we've got these mobsters, and they're comic bookish, cartoonish villains. But at least it breaks up the monotony of her talking about all her poor choices and sexual partners. So now we've got at least the bad guys show up, and now we've got a little bit more interesting. And then Bond finally shows up, and you're like, okay, yay. And then the whole thing's over and done with, fairly shortly after that. And you're like, oh, okay, well.
Really not shortly enough, because he plays around forever. Like you said, it takes too long. Even though it is a short amount of time in terms of pages, it feels like Goldfinger's golf game. It just takes forever in my mind as I read it. And when he finally gets done with it, it just feels so stupid. A huge letdown. And then at the end, we have James Bond reminding everyone what a good guy he is, because he's like, well, there are probably police rewards on these people, so we'll have to fix it to make sure that you get the reward money for apprehending these now dead guys. And the insurance company will want to pay a reward for you preventing the fraud claim. So I'll make sure of that too. And now I'm going to leave, bye. But he's telling her how he's making sure she's set up with all this money. And then the police officer investigating, who makes it a point to say, yeah, we had this big British agent who convinced Washington to do all this, that, and the next thing for you. So, yeah, you slept with him, didn't you? Because, of course, he has to slut-shame her and point out that the police can kind of figure out that there were two people in that bed. So we got to do the slut-shaming thing. And he's like, let me give you some fatherly advice here. He's not really a good man. You don't want to sleep with men like that. They're not really your heroes. They're bad men. So you made yet another poor sexual choice.
Yeah. In case you thought you had broken your streak, you have not. Just let me tell you.
And that, at least when Bond killed the bad guys, it's like, okay, we have something that went right in this book. And then, no, you have to come back with the slut-shaming cop. Really? Really?
But he was trying to be fatherly and helpful. He thought he was being nice. Anyways, yes, it was unnecessary. And completely, again, more characterization of this woman, quote unquote, that was completely unbelievable. So it helped drive home the fact that we were hearing a story in a female voice from a male voice.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves. Even Ian Fleming regretted it almost as soon as it was published, and he actually tried to keep it from being reprinted ever again. It didn't end up succeeding, but he did try. And like I said, when he sold the rights to the book for movie making, it's like, title only. Do not bring this story out into the light of day. It doesn't deserve it.
So at least he did recognize that, which is nice. A lot of times you'll see authors write something that's not up to par with what they normally write, and they'll defend it to their dying breath instead of just admitting, nope, that wasn't my best work. At least Fleming had the good sense to be like, okay, that one wasn't great. I'm sorry. Why don't we just skip that one and move on? Which is what I would recommend to most casual readers of the Bond series. I would not recommend this as a must-read unless, as you had said previously, you are a completist. If you have to read everything Fleming wrote about James Bond, then unfortunately, that means you're going to have to read this one too, just as we did. If you have read this book, though, and you want to, maybe you liked it, maybe you thought there was some more redeeming qualities that we didn't touch upon, let us know. You can find us on Twitter at Her Majesty's Pod. You can comment on this post right on our website at hermajestiespod.com. You can find me on Twitter at Eric J. Dewey, and you can email me, Eric at hermajestiespod.com. Or you can... I was leading into you telling your stuff.
You can also find me on Twitter at CinemaOTR, and you can email me directly, Ziggy at cinemaontherocks.com. So we make it pretty easy for you to find us. We're all over the place, so by all means, drop us some notes. We'd love it.
Yes, absolutely. And go give us a like on our Facebook page. Oddly enough, it's facebook.com/Her Majesty's Pod. Try to keep things
Who'd have thunk that?
Try to keep things simple around here. But yeah, so did you have any more thoughts on The Spy Who Loved Me?
Like you said, it's definitely an easy skip for the casual reader. For Bond completists, this is the one book I will suggest that you read out of order, because if you read the books in the order in which they were presented, then this would come in the middle of the Blofeld trilogy, and you don't want that.
No.
Read this as an afterthought. Read this basically when you're doing the short story collections, or when you're all done with everything else, because this book just does not belong. So
one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, it's just, this book is crap. I'm just going to say it. It sucks.
It really is. And while I will say at least James Bond was more involved in the story than some of the short stories when we discussed them, I would still recommend the short stories above this, because even though Bond may not have played a big part in the stories, there were still better stories. This was just a weak story to begin with, and then told in a very weak way through the eyes of this weak female character, and it just, all it does the entire time is scream, this is a dude bro writing this. The entire time, that's what you're thinking. You're like, some guy who either doesn't understand women or just straight up doesn't like women is writing this female character, and it gets tiring pretty quick.
Yeah. So that does it for The Spy Who Loved Me, which we did not love. The polar opposite of how we thought of the movie. We now move on to the very last Ian Fleming James Bond novel, which was actually published several years posthumous to Ian Fleming's death. And there's even a rumor that has never been proven or disproven that Ian Fleming didn't actually finish writing the book. That he'd had parts of it written, an outline of it written, or he'd written it as a draft and intended to go back and edit some more, but that basically someone else, possibly Kingsley Amis, possibly someone else, we don't know, put some kind of polish on it, if you want to call it that, and basically script doctored it so that it could be published after his death. And the edition that I actually have the first paperback edition of this book. And it says, the Bond novel with the largest hardcover sale. Yeah, you know why? Because it was the last Bond novel. That's why. It's not because it's any good. At least not to me, anyway. I have a feeling, based on how Eric's talked about this at the beginning, Eric liked this better than I did. I barely like this better than The Spy Who Loved Me.
Maybe it was because I read it right on the heels of The Spy Who Loved Me. Like, literally, I turned the last page of The Spy Who Loved Me, turned right to the first page of Man with the Golden Gun, and just continued reading. I felt that it was a better story in general than The Spy Who Loved Me, while not being a very good one. I'm not saying that I liked this book. This is definitely still way down on my list compared to all of the other books we've talked about. These are still, these two are grouped together for a reason, because neither one of them are very good. However, I would say that this one has more redeeming features than The Spy Who Loved Me. And that's really as far as I'm willing to go with it. I'm not saying that, no, this one's good. This one's definitely, yeah, check this out. No, it isn't. It isn't a very good book, and a lot of it stems from what we talked about. It doesn't feel 100% finished, and it doesn't feel very Bond-like. But not just the writing, but the story itself, I did not like a lot of the aspects of the story. And that, I'm sure, was even already in the outline. I doubt that was stuff that was added by anybody else. That was actually how Fleming wrote it, and I didn't like that.
And it is indeed something that I remember you mentioning way back when, something that you were very much looking forward to. Because I remember when we talked about You Only Live Twice, which is the last book in the Blofeld trilogy, and the second last book in the James Bond series, where when Bond suddenly recovers his memory, at least starts to, you were really curious about what happened next. Man with the Golden Gun is what happened next.
Yeah. No, so that's where they lost me. It's like, first of all, I was a little bit, at the end of that previous one, it's kind of like, it's kind of iffy, but at the same time, you're like, okay, I'll go with it. The Man with the Golden Gun starts off with James Bond coming back suddenly, essentially coming back to life, according to everybody who knows him, but evidently not as his own former self. No, he's been brainwashed by the Soviets to go in and kill M. I did not like this part at all. I don't want to think of my Bond being susceptible to that. I would think that he would, force them to kill him before they were able to brainwash him into going and killing M. That's how I want to perceive my Bond. So I did not like that bit at all.
I'll agree with you. I didn't like that bit. It doesn't strike me as something that Ian Fleming's Bond, the one who's capable of making loser decisions in every story he's in, because he does. It's something I couldn't even picture this version of Bond doing. It just didn't feel right. Like you said, though, it did bring up one very interesting detail. And as with the other book, I'm going for the little things that might redeem something about it. We find out in the course of Bond trying and of obviously failing to kill M that the previous M was murdered at his own desk in his office by an agent, which I found interesting.
Yeah, which I think it was interesting, but it almost felt like it was an afterthought used to explain why they had the fancy countermeasures in place that saved this M.
And they're very fancy countermeasures too.
Yeah, for this day and age. I mean, this was 65, and they're talking about an instantaneously, must have been spring-loaded or hydraulic or something, a complete sheet of bulletproof and chemical-proof plexiglass immediately falling down from the ceiling quick enough to get in the way of a poison capsule being shot from some sort of crude gun of some sort. Not an actual gun bullet-wise, but some form of poison blob slinger, we'll call it that. But this plexiglass sheet was able to pop down fast enough to prevent the poison capsule from making it to M's face.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that even though the Soviets can brainwash the world's best secret agent, they're incredibly stupid. They don't let him just show up the way he normally would coming back, the way that you would expect an established agent to come back. No, they decide to insert him like they would just a regular, let's start a brand new cover operative from the street, which immediately tips the British off that something is wrong. So he shows up at the embassy instead of just like showing up at Tanner's house like we would expect him to, or showing up at M's house and saying 007 reporting for duty. What the hell took you so long?
Yeah, that was just another example of the movies doing it so much better than the books even, which is, it's weird to say considering that this is where the character comes from, but you got to give it to Eon and that whole team to be able to take these stories and be like, let's make them more than what they were.
And also, just in terms of, if you want to see this kind of thing done better, the whole brainwashing thing, obviously the classic example of this done very much better is in the novel by Condon, which was then made into film with Frank Sinatra, The Manchurian Candidate, where you have
a newer version of that. It wasn't
the
great.
Newer version sucks. We don't talk about the newer version. The version with Denzel Washington sucks, okay? We talk about the version with Frank Sinatra. That's actually a really good movie. And, the book, that's actually a pretty decent book. If you want to see brainwashing done right, watch that movie, read that book, and don't watch the Denzel Washington remake. It sucks. But anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, no, the brainwashing thing, I did not like it all because you, first of all, like, I was almost willing to give it to him because, yes, you are dealing with a damaged mind to begin with. You're dealing with a guy who lost his memory and was living a different life for a time and then was only just starting to get it back. But then for them to go on top of that and say, okay, well, he just now got his memory back. Now we're going to wipe that memory and give him new memories again. Yeah, I think you're playing with fire there, and that's, I don't know, I just didn't buy it. And then, of course,
we can remember it for you wholesale. Get your ass to Britain. Get your ass to Britain.
Exactly. It's just so unbelievable. And then the fact that they were able to just, let's just unbrainwash him. We'll send him to our doctors and just unbrainwash him. He'll be fine again. Except we've got to test him. And so to test him, we're going to send him out on a mission that we've sent many other people out on, none of which who have come back from this mission. It's that whole scene is ended with, M actually asking himself, did I just sign James Bond's death warrant? How many times have you basically signed his death warrant and now all of a sudden you're concerned about it? Come on, guy.
Yeah, and that's it. We have James Bond just tried to kill M, and immediately, and this is very decent of him, I will say, M decides to go all hush-hush about it and says, nope, this never happened. Nope, never happened at all, because if it did, he'd end up in prison for at least 15 to 20. No, we're just going to cure him, and then we're going to reinstate him as an agent and send him on an impossible mission, and if he's captured or killed, we'll disavow any knowledge of his existence. And if he succeeds, then he'll be back with full honors, and we may even give him a knighthood. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Whatever. So they send him after the man with the golden gun, the man we know as Francisco Scaramanga.
Francisco Pistols.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Pistols. That's what I was kind of going to lead into, is the fact that this is not the Christopher Lee Scaramanga. This is an annoying, cartoonish, comic bookish, just random, mob guy, basically, whose one thing is that, he's got this gold-plated gun, and he uses gold core bullets instead of lead, which is just dumb because it's not going to, in that capacity, it's not going to do anything different.
It was a gold jacket over silver core.
Oh, was that? I thought it was the other way around, but either way, still, doesn't matter.
It wasn't the cool golden gun that's made out of a cigarette lighter and a cigar case and that kind of thing.
No, just a standard gun with gold plating, which at least makes more sense. I will say that part, because, you can make the bullet out of gold if you want to, because it's just as soft as lead, and most bullets are made out of lead anyway, so that part's fine. If you make a complete gun out of gold, you're going to get to fire it maybe once, and if you're lucky, it won't destroy your hand when it blows up. Most likely, though, it will fall apart, because it's just not, gold is not a strong enough metal to handle that kind of explosive force. Now, a gold-plated gun, on the other hand, okay, I'm on board with that. So on the one hand, slightly more realistic. On the other hand, not nearly as cool. Plus, there was one other, I wouldn't say big thing missing. I'd actually say it was a small thing that was missing. But
did you miss Knick Knack?
I missed Knick Knack. Where was Knick Knack? Oh man, I felt that the story was short something, without Knick Knack in play.
So it didn't take place on Fantasy Island for you?
Yeah. There's no deplane. So Scaramanga is not nearly the badass that we get in the movie.
No, he's not urbane at all. Remember the description that I just gave about horror and Slugsy?
Yep.
From The Spy Who Loved Me, where you just have the level 2 Goombas who are like, it's Quaintance formula. Except Scaramanga's catchphrase is, you get me? Every sentence ends with, you get me? Oh, I'll get you all right. Shut the fuck up, Scaramanga. I'm sick of it. You get me? I mean, did that actively annoy you as much as it annoyed me? I mean, I wanted to punch the book.
Every time I would try to visualize the character, my mind wanted to go to Christopher Lee. But then he would talk, and I would nope, I can't sully Christopher Lee's reputation with this voice. So it was very hard for me to actively enjoy this character because, part of it's because I'm trying to match it up a little bit with the movie, even though the storyline is completely different. Besides the fact that we have this, the character who happens to carry a golden gun, he's not this insanely high-paid assassin. They're talking about him getting $100,000 for a hit, and that's after he's been around for a while, not this $1 million a hit, one shot, one kill type of thing. No, he's just a good shot, and he kills a lot of people, and he's able to, even though everybody knows exactly what he is and what he does, he's never been able to be caught. They've never been able to actually tie him to anything. That's his bigger claim to fame in the book than anything else, is the fact that everybody knows, but nobody can do anything about it.
It's like the John Gotti type thing, the Teflon assassin, I suppose. Yeah, it's an annoying character. The only thing that is actually consistent with the movie is the backstory of how he grew up in the circus and how he was a trick shot artist in the circus and that his favorite elephant was killed, and then he turned around and killed the people who killed the elephants and ran away from the circus and then decided to become an assassin. And of course he is a paid Soviet assassin because that's what we do, because we're in Ian Fleming's universe now. You get me?
Okay, feller.
Yeah, so that's who James Bond is after. Francisco, you get me? Pistols, Scaramanga.
Yeah, the character is not nearly as deep, and even though they give him more backstory, he still ends up coming off as more shallow than the Scaramanga of the movie. And it's just not great. You don't get anything good. I think the best, at the very end of the book, when they have their final standoff, that was the best moments for Scaramanga in the entire book, I felt. When he's laying there essentially bleeding out, but still, kills the snake and just starts eating it raw because he's hungry. And, then he's able to talk James Bond into giving him a moment to pray because he's a devout Catholic, or something randomly. He's like, what? Okay.
And Bond, of course, in his fine tradition, makes the stupid decision.
It's like, okay, yeah. Well, because at the time, he's still mad at himself he's like, I guess I'm going to have to shoot him in cold blood because otherwise it's not going to turn out well. And so he's still, once again, fighting with his self, with his own identity of an assassin to just shoot the guy. I'm like, you already shot at him. He was shooting at you. Now you've got him pinned down, yes, but the fact of the matter is you're about to pass out. He mentions several times, like, if I stand up here for much longer, I'm going to pass out and just be lying here dying with him. So shoot him and move on. That's it.
Not only that, but we've already had, just prior to this, Scaramanga go all Snidely Whiplash on us and allegedly tie a naked woman to a train trestle so that she could be run over and beheaded.
Yes.
And Bond thinks that he really did it.
Yep. Until the last
you
moment
get me?
when he sees it actually happen, and then he's like, "Oh, that was a dummy. Why?" That part made no sense once we found out it wasn't actually Goodnight. Like, it was like, okay, yeah, it's kind of, Old West villainy, but at least it's, Bondish Old West villainy, so I'm okay with it until you find out that it's not real. And it's like, what was the point of that?
And he was fooled.
Yeah. And the only explanation given for why he set that up was because evidently he thought, if this is really James Bond, when he finds out that Mary Goodnight is on the train tracks, he'll give himself away. Well, they've already decided that he's Bond. They don't need him to give himself away at this point. They already know. So why is it suddenly now that why does he suddenly need this ruse to try and get him to admit it? It's like, you don't care. Just shoot him. Not
only that, but whether he's James Bond or not, because he only got him into his inner circle as Mr. Who's-This. That's what he calls him,
yep.
Mr. Who's-This. And Bond goes by the alias of Mark Hazard, by the way, insurance investigator.
Hazard is my middle name. Oh, wait, no, it's not. Danger is my middle name. Hazard's my last name. Mark Danger
Duke.
Hazard.
Yeah, but he's already decided he's going to kill him anyway, so who gives a shit? Just kill him!
Yeah, it's...
And the same for Bond. Why? He even says, right after he misses his first opportunity to kill him, I should have killed him. I didn't. I should have killed him again. I didn't. He could have taken about 1 million opportunities to kill him, and he doesn't.
There were so many times when he was alone in the same room as him. Like some of the times when he said, I could kill him right now, but all these guys are here, all these people saw it, and they would be on me, and I would have to fight them all off and things like this. Like, okay, that makes sense not to kill him in that situation, but how many times have you been alone in a room with this guy? Like, a bunch. Like, seriously, you had your opportunity about 1 zillion times, and for some reason, like, they put it under the guise of, oh, we're going to catch all of these bad guys now that we find out that he's working with a consortium of criminals from around the world. That's never happened in a James Bond story before. So they want to try to get them all instead of just getting Scaramanga.
But even then, he finds out Felix Leiter, good old Felix, the best part of the book, let me tell you that, happens to be there spying on them, getting all the dirt, so they're going to get them all anyway. So why? Why? Obviously, there has to be one reason why. And you know what that reason is? The Calypso Band. That's why. Yes, there's a scene at this conference of hoodlums after James Bond has missed a million opportunities to kill Scaramanga, which is his one and only mission. And Bond has, of course, been hired anonymously as his special aide, rather like the position, actually, that Goldfinger gave him in the Goldfinger book. And there's this Calypso Band entertaining all the hoodlums, except they're being very boring. So Bond, in order to establish his bona fides as a badass, takes a gun, shoots a fruit off the lady's head, because, of course, he has to demonstrate to them what a great shot he is, because he wants to keep his cover, dumbass. So then, after that, he says, okay, you guys, you're boring. So I want you all to go back, change, women out, come back out here with at least half the clothes gone. By the end of the night, I expect you all to strip. I expect you to sing the dirty lyrics to everything. And, direct quote, smoke some weed. Bond tells the band to go smoke some weed. Yep. And then informs them that all of the women are going to be prostituted out. So they just better do it. And what do? They go along with it because he gives a $100 tip. Really?
Evidently, $100 is all it takes. That was a weird scene, I felt, especially when they went from, okay, it's just this band just kind of playing in the background. Then he's like, okay, first of all, I'm going to shoot the pineapple off of this woman's head, which is going to make them love me somehow. Then I'm going to go tell them to do all these things and then tell the people that they're going to come back better than ever because they just need to get some alcohol and weed in them. They can't do this dry. That was just so weird. And then the one girl comes out and like does this weird striptease / pseudo-sexual act with a giant rubber hand or leather hand of some sort. Like,
oh God, I'd managed to forget that. Damn.
I was like, what? I don't understand. Like, did they just have this giant hand laying around just in case? Like, they describe it as basically a 6 foot tall statue covered in leather, I believe it was, of a hand. And then this woman proceeds to do things to each and every finger before finishing.
She basically
leaving.
Screws every finger. Oh, man, I wish I had not remembered that.
It kind of stuck in my mind, so I was like, what's going on here? And then, of course, that's the one that Scaramanga wants, so he makes sure that they set her aside for him.
Because he is, of course, the man with the golden gun, and he has to have sex before every kill. That part they also kept.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that. Even though they had, there was rumors that maybe that wasn't true because he can't whistle. And if you can't whistle, as we all know, people who can't whistle are gay, which, of course, prompted M, as he was reading this, to make sure he remembered how to whistle. Like, what would have happened if you'd have been like, oh, if you can't whistle, you're gay. Oh, crap, I guess I'm gay. Like, what would have happened if he'd have been like, oh, crap, I can't whistle right now? Like, seriously, what was the point of that?
And yet, okay, so if you can't whistle, you're gay. And yet, if you're gay, you have a lisp, which is basically whistling every time you talk.
Make up your mind. Yeah, that whole thing.
All the stereotypes are stupid, folks.
Yeah.
Anybody can be gay, okay?
And it's just
no shame
another
in it.
example of Fleming's Flemingness in that moment. It's something that could easily have been left out of the story. It was not necessary for the story in any way, shape, or form. But you see Fleming's prejudices kind of come to light once again. All of these books would be much better if he'd been able to kind of leave his own prejudices out of the storylines.
Yeah, and reading from the back of this edition that I have, again, the first paperback edition of the book, it describes Bond's adventure aided by his sex galore Confederate Mary Goodnight. 007 battles Scaramanga from a native bordello to a deluxe hotel. Okay, let's go these point by point. Sex galore Mary Goodnight, who, as you all know, was my choice for single worst Bond girl ever in the films. Eric did not agree with me there, but I just could not stand her. She's characterized better in the book. In the book, for those who remember, she was Bond's personal secretary. She was the personal secretary to all of the 00s. There were 3 00s. They all shared basically a money penny, and the money penny was Goodnight. Well, after James Bond disappeared in You Only Live Twice, apparently Mary Goodnight was transferred off of that duty and ended up being put onto the Jamaica section, which is where James Bond finds her now. And so now, because he couldn't sleep with her when she was his secretary, but now he can. But was there anything that you thought about her that was really sex galore? I mean, even for Ian Fleming, who has people have sex at the drop of a hat, I just wasn't seeing it.
No, I mean, they pointed out that she was attractive and that he wanted to, but nothing, not until the very end when she's suggesting that they can spend some time together as he heals and that it's okay for an unmarried couple to live together in Jamaica because they're not so stuffy about these things. Up until that point, there's really nothing that screams sexuality from her other than the fact that he, mentions that she happens to have boobs a couple of times and that evidently there was one scene, I believe he was dreaming about having sex with her. I think that was the closest we got to anything that might build her up to sex galore. But no, I don't think that was sold very well in the book, if that's what was the intention.
And then he pulled off his virtual reality goggles at John Cleese. No, just kidding. And the other thing with her appearance, what was up with when she showed up at the hotel and Scaramanga lets her go? What? Her showing up at all was stupid, and letting her go was even more stupid.
Yeah. The only thing I can think there is that he wanted to let her go so that he could try to pull off the fake dummy on the train tracks later, because if he killed her there or took her captive there, then, the game's up. I don't know. I can't even... I'm trying to justify bad writing in my own brain, and it didn't even work for me, so I don't know.
Yeah. And this exotic native bordello they talk about, it was basically a building that was falling apart, kind of like a sleazy ruin of a cafe that happened to have some rooms upstairs, couple of pet crows. Really exciting bordello locale there.
Yeah.
That they're overselling.
Yeah, evidently they had one girl at a time working, basically. I mean, how bad was that?
Often for free?
Yeah, exactly. She's like, well, Lisa's up there right now, but if you want to wait half an hour, Tina will be free. I'm like, so you mean she's busy right now, and you want me to go in there right after? That's puts an image in my brain that I'm not interested in right now.
Well,
I mean, I get that.
Not that I know this from personal experience, because I don't, but that is how these things work.
Yes, and I understand that, and I think it's generally understood that this is the type of thing where you're not necessarily getting first pick. But the way that you're like, oh, well, if you wait half an hour, she'll be free. It's like, that just puts that image to the forefront of your mind. You're like, no, that's okay. I'll pass.
It's just not Bondage.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Bond doesn't have to pay for it. I mean, that's the one thing. If they had Bond to actually pay for a prostitute, I would have been severely disappointed. Especially after just saying that some of the regulars get it for free anyway.
And then the deluxe hotel, which we're told is basically a ruin that's in worse shape than the motel from The Spy Who Loved Me, and probably in worse shape than the cozy motel from For Your Eyes Only. And the walls aren't even finished. This doesn't exactly win Ian Fleming's Travelogue Award. Let's put it that way.
No, not at all. It's whoever wrote this blurb was. Maybe they were enjoying some weed with that Calypso band. I don't know.
In the most blood-curdling death duel in the Great Bond saga. I'm not saying it was a bad duel, but blood-curdling?
Yeah. No, the end scene, not the final scene of the book, because that was just kind of, okay, whatever. But the actual final battle between Bond and Scaramanga was fairly entertaining. There was at least some action. There was some excitement. I wouldn't say there was much suspense. I mean, everybody pretty much knew what was going on. But it was fun.
That, I think, was basically the only decent part of the book. And then when you get to the end where you have the telegram where, hey, we want to confer a knighthood on you now because of this beating up Pistols Scaramanga. And Bond replies how he's a good Scottish peasant. It's like, did that strike you as weird?
Yes.
That whole thing.
Yeah, the whole heavily leaning, like, out of nowhere. Like, he's mentioned, yes, one of his parents was Scottish. That's really the only thing that's been mentioned. But he went out of his way to really drive the whole Scottish peasant thing home right then. It's like, but why? All you have to do is say, no thanks. It's a secret service, so I've got to stay secret, even though everybody knows my name. But we're going to ignore that part as Bond stories always do. But that part made sense. Like, oh yeah, they want to give you a knighthood, but he's not going to accept it because in so many other stories they've tried to give him awards or tried to give him various commendations, and of course he cannot accept them and stay in the Secret Service. So,
but
yeah.
Even then, you're going to get a knighthood for taking down You Get Me Snidely Whiplash, whereas Thunderball, nuclear weapons, hey, Moonraker, you stopped London from getting nuked. All these other better choices, and taking down Pistol Scaramanga? Really? I mean, like you said, this is not the awesome character of Christopher Lee fame. This guy's just a twerp. I don't get how that earned a knighthood.
Yeah, I again, it was one of those situations where they were trying to build this guy up to more than he was. And even though the entire story had proven that he wasn't this big thing, they still wanted to believe that he was. And yeah, it's like, come on now. Really, guys?
Which then brings up the question, do you think Ian Fleming wrote the whole thing?
Based on the fact that it did seem very unpolished, it very much sounds like he might have... I'm betting that they had somebody go in and fill in a little bit, maybe more editing than would normally go on without an author's approval. I don't know. It didn't seem to shift drastically at any point to me, to where I've read books that were partially completed by one author and finished up by somebody else after they died, and almost always there's a definite shift where the new author takes over. So I think, if anything, there may have been just some details filled in, but the fact that it did kind of strike me a little bit as unfinished, just in general, like it didn't seem as filled in as some of the other stories. So it very much felt to me like it could have been basically what he had at the time. I don't think he would have called it finished, but I don't think it didn't feel to me like anybody else had a huge hand in it.
I mostly agree. I think there was a scene or two where I wonder if the voice or the specifics of a small plot point weren't Fleming. Like, I'm thinking specifically the point where Mary Goodnight is just allowed to leave. That scene struck me as something that there's a huge, huge hole there. And even though Fleming isn't necessarily the tightest writer around, I don't think he left a hole that big. And I think that was someone else polishing in, just trying to make the best of what was there without putting too many words in Fleming's mouth. Again, this is all speculation. We don't know. But that was the vibe I got when I read that scene. But overall, I agree. I think it's an unfinished book that was given a quick polish at the end. And it was like, well, we want to make some money off of this. And, people will want a last Bond novel if they know that there was one mostly written. So here we go.
Yeah.
Money.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that happens when an author dies and they've got an incomplete work. Same thing happens with any artist in any genre. I mean, how many just earlier this year, I think, or was it at the end of last year? I don't know. Time moves so quickly these days. But just a little while ago, a new Michael Jackson track was released. It's like, well, it can't be new, obviously, but it was something that was evidently unfinished. He had recorded some of it, but it wasn't finished. They got Justin Timberlake to go in there and put some vocals on it too, and actually turned it into a fun song. Not a great song, I wouldn't say, but a fun song. But I've heard other things that have been released by musical artists, after their deaths, and it's like, there was a reason they didn't release this stuff. They didn't think it was good enough, and just because they're dead doesn't make it suddenly good enough. There's been a lot of junk released after people's death that people buy up because they're like, oh, they're gone, so now I need to support them somehow. The logic is flawed, but I think this was one of those situations. They had at least most of a story, if not the entire story, and why let it go to waste?
Yeah, and the end result is To me, not a very good book. I actually found it kind of painful to read. It was a bit better of a slog than The Spy Who Loved Me, but that's not saying much. That's like saying the second filling is easier to deal with than the first. I didn't really like this book. I mean, as essential reading for a Bond fan who wants to know how Fleming's world of Bond completed, you have to. Mm-hmm. But just understand that, at least from my perspective, this is not a good book. And if you're just a casual fan or a casual reader, it's skippable. Maybe you don't want to know what happened after he left Japan.
Yeah, maybe you can just leave it at that. Maybe he stays a Japanese fisherman, raises his child, and that's it. That's the end of Bond as a character. I could live with that after having read this. Like before, I was like, no, I need more. Well, I was given more, and I was severely disappointed. So maybe I didn't need that. Yeah, definitely better than The Spy Who Loved Me. I will say a lot better, but still worse than just about every other Bond book out there. Like you said, I would agree completely. For the Bond completist, of course, you're going to have to read this. Feel free to have a few drinks handy. Wouldn't hurt. As for the casual reader in the Bond universe, I would say you go ahead and stop after you only live twice and leave it there.
Yeah, it's just, and especially if you have good memories of Christopher Lee as Scaramanga. Yeah, don't. Just don't.
Plus, Knick-Knack.
Yeah,
I never thought I'd miss Knick-Knack that much, but man, reading this book, I'm like, where's Knick-Knack? Where is he?
Yeah, he got the short end.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
But that will do it for the last two Ian Fleming James Bond novels. So to cleanse the palate, to hopefully make things a little bit better from dwelling on two subpar works, we're going back to what we at least consider a special treat. We hope you do too. As you may remember from our Fun for the Whole Family episode, we reminded you about the Find Your Fate, Choose Your Own Adventure series, a series of young adult books, and we put that in quotation marks because, let's face it, they were also marketed to grade school children. And when you look at the content of some of these books, you age-appropriate audiences, you kind of start to wonder who they're really written for.
Yes.
But these Choose Your Own Adventure style books came out in 1985 as extras after A View to a Kill, and there were 4 of them written. Last time on the, well, not this most recent episode, but on the Fun for the Whole Family episode, we went through one of those books where I read the book and Eric made all of the adventure choices. This time around, we're going to be discussing Strike It Deadly by Barbara and Scott Siegel, whose other works I'm not familiar with. The last one we did was by R.L. Stein, who is much more famous.
Yes.
And Eric will be reading the book, and I will be James Bond, and I will try not to kill us in 2 choices.
Good luck to you, because that was devastating. I didn't want to kill Bond at all, but I killed him in 2 turns, and that is it.
And just by happenstance, and really, I didn't plan it this way, I believe this is one of the books that takes place primarily in San Francisco. Yes.
It does have the Golden Gate Bridge on the cover of the book, along with the quite obviously Roger Moore version of James Bond. We do also see a little bit of underwater knife fighting going on. A male and female in scuba gear battling it out with oh no, she's got a knife, he's only got a flashlight. He's gonna lose. Never bring a flashlight to a knife fight.
Could be a mag light.
And then you see a computer chip, or what is supposed to be a computer chip. The cover reads, "You are James Bond. A mad computer genius wants to take over the world. Can you stop him? How? The choices are up to you." So, you ready? You ready to jump into this and find your fate?
I am ready to find my fate.
All right. I'm going to start here at the very beginning. It says, you are about to go on a secret mission as James Bond, Secret Agent 007, a murder detective, a beautiful woman in trouble, a mad computer genius, and a plan to destroy half of California. These are pieces in a deadly puzzle that you must put together. As Agent 007 of Her Majesty's Secret Service, you must choose your own actions and decide your own fate by following the directions at the bottom of each page. If you make the right choices, your mission will be exciting and successful. If you make the wrong choices, evil will triumph, and the golden legend of James Bond will become a tarnished memory of the past. Your mission, 007, begins on page 1.
Ha! Dun, 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 dun.
So, turning to page 1. Paris, France. You have just arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. You look at your watch and frown. It's nearly 8 o'clock. As James Bond, Agent 007, you have a license to kill, but you don't have a license to be late. And the man you're meeting said 8:30 sharp. Luckily, an empty taxi pulls over just as you are coming out of the airport terminal. You jump right into the cab and say, "Take me to the Eiffel Tower." The burly driver nods and closes the glass partition behind him. You relax. There's very little traffic. It looks as if you'll make it in plenty of time. But then suddenly, steel clamps spring out from behind you, grabbing your arms and pinning you tightly against the back seat. You're a prisoner! The driver looks in his rearview mirror, gives you an evil smile, then pushes a button on the dashboard, releasing a sweet-smelling green gas that begins to fill the back of the cab. You start to choke. The taxi driver is grinning at you now. He expects you to scream, to cry out, to beg. But instead, you bend your head down and with your teeth pull a pen out of your shirt pocket. The driver looks puzzled. You turn the pen in your teeth and then, with a toss of your head, flip it towards the partition. It explodes! The force of the blast opens the steel clamps and sends you and the entire back seat hurtling out of the cab. Though the taxi is now a blazing junk heap, you land safely, in cushioned comfort, right on the back seat, just off the roadway. You stand up, straighten your tie. I hope he wasn't expecting a tip, you say. Well, Mr. Bond, what are you going to do next? If you decide to hurry to your 8:30 meeting at the Eiffel Tower, turn to page 7. If you decide instead that you had better go to the taxi company and investigate this attempt on your life, turn to page 12. Ziggy, it is time to find your fate.
Well, after successfully using an exploding pen, I think the only possible solution is to turn to page 007 and make my appointment at the Eiffel Tower.
All right, here we go. You're accustomed to attempts on your life, so you decide to hurry for your date at the Eiffel Tower. You spot a man at the foot of the famous French landmark holding a small package in one hand and a bouquet of white roses in the other. That's the signal you were told to look for. He's obviously the detective that your superior, M, sent you here to meet. Monsieur Abournin, you say? Ah, Mr. Bond, exclaims the detective as he looks down at his watch. You're right on time, thank goodness. I have something very important to tell you, and this package is for you. You look around. It's very crowded at the base of the tower, and a killer could easily be lurking nearby. Remembering your recent deadly ride, you decide to play it safe. Why don't we go someplace else to talk, you suggest, picking up the package that you are certain contains briefing information and probably the latest inventions from Q, the Secret Service's master inventor. Good idea, says Aberdeen. There's a club up the street with a popular stage show. It's noisy and dark. No one will pay any attention to us there. Come. Now we are turning to page 14, as per the instructions. It is dark in the club that Aberdeen takes you to, and very noisy. There is a female singer bellowing out a comical song while a colorful butterfly puppet on strings keeps flitting about near her head. The audience is roaring with laughter, and you're having a hard time hearing what Aberdeen is saying. He pulls out a folder and shows you a picture of an intense young man. This is Zorin, he says. Max Zorin, the industrialist, you ask? Right. We have an operative inside his company. Zorin has a plan to take over the world's microchip production. If he succeeds, he'll control all the computers on Earth, and anyone who controls computers controls the world. You point at another picture in the file of a striking black woman with close cropped hair. Who's that? You shout over the noise as the puppet swoops over the audience. They call her Mayday, Aberdeen tells you. Lovely but lethal. Probably KGB. But as of now, she works with Zorin. Just how is this Mr. Zorin going to cash in on chips, you ask over the noise? We're not sure. That's why you must find out, Mr. Bond. You must go to San Francisco. You must see Stacy Sutton. These are the last words you can make out as the butterfly puppet suddenly swerves away from the singer on the stage and flies right at Aberdeen. Hurry and turn to page 19. Oh, gotta hurry. It tells me to hurry. Look out, you shout. What? He says, unable to hear you. It's too late. A needle sticking out of the butterfly puppet strikes Aberdeen in the forehead and his eyes grow wide. He tries to speak, but he can't. The needle is poisoned. It kills him almost instantly. You look up above the stage into the scaffolding and see the hooded puppeteer fleeing. There are only two ways out of the club, the front door or through the kitchen at the back. Which way will the killer try to escape? It's time once again to find your fate. If you decide to try and head off the killer at the front door, turn to page 23. If you decide to try and head the killer off at the kitchen, turn to page 28. So Ziggy, find your fate.
I will find my fate in the kitchen on page 28.
We are turning to page 28 to head off the killer at the kitchen.
Oh, shit.
You barrel through the swinging doors of the kitchen right behind the fleeing puppeteer. Waiters, waitresses, and white-clad chefs scurry to get out of your way. You gain on the killer. His bulky costume and flapping hood slow him down. As he turns a corner around a huge oven, he seems to slip. This is your chance! But just as you're about to dive for his feet to tackle him, a frying pan slams down on your head. You didn't think the murderer was working alone, did you? And now the puppeteer and his accomplice pick you up and stuff you into the giant oven. It was a half-baked idea to stop the killer in the kitchen. Now it's fully baked. And so are you.
Wow! I made it past 2.
You did.
I made it to 3.
You got Bond stuffed in an oven.
Wow!
He's more baked than the Calypso band in the last book. This is... So yes, you did make it past 2 choices. That was what, 3, 4?
3, I think.
Okay. So so my record stays intact for now.
With that said, how about we do just like we did when you killed him off quickly and go back to that last decision and make a better one?
Let's do that. Turning back, I think it was to page 19. Yes.
Yep. So okay. I'm going to go to the front door because I don't want to get the Hansel and Gretel treatment.
All right. So instead of turning to page 28 and certain death, we're going to turn to page 23. All right. You get to the front door just a moment too late. The hooded puppeteer is now running down the street toward the Eiffel Tower. You draw your gun, but you can't get a clear shot. There are too many people around. Your only choice is to run out into the street and chase after him. You're running hard, dodging and darting through the crowd at the bottom of the Eiffel Tower. Where did the puppeteer go? You can't find him. Then you look up. There, on the staircase leading up the huge tower, is the killer. Without any hesitation, you start climbing up after him. You know once he gets to the top, he'll have nowhere to go. Keep climbing the stairs and turn to page 74. At the top of the Eiffel Tower, the puppeteer is waiting. He removes his hood, and you see that he isn't a he at all. The murderer is the beautiful woman whose picture was in Aberdeen's folder. Mayday! She climbs up on the railing high above the city below, or the ground below. Don't! You cry out. She laughs at you and jumps. You rush to the railing, but instead of seeing her fall to her death, you see a parachute open from the back of her puppeteer's costume. She smiles as the wind takes her sailing over the river scene. You can't let her get away. You quickly take a handkerchief from your jacket pocket. I hope this invention of Q's works, you tell yourself. Q never tested this pocket parachute, but he assured you it would work. Are you ready to test it? If you want to try the parachute, turn to page 8. If you think it's a mistake to try Q's untested invention, turn to page 50. All right, Ziggy, find your fate.
No, Q hasn't let me down yet. So, what the hell? Page 8. I'm going to try it.
Let's try that pocket parachute. Here we go. You take a deep breath, which could be your last. Hold the handkerchief over your head and then jump feet first off the tower. You're falling. The pavement seems to be rushing up at you. People scream down below. This is the end, or so it seems, until, all of a sudden, the pocket parachute flutters open. You're safe! And just as Mayday did, you sail out over the river scene. Now we turn to page 109. Good old Q. You land in the water, where your chute inflates and becomes a life raft. Wow. You look around and see that Mayday has landed in a waiting speedboat. You'll never catch her now, but at least you're alive and you have some clues to work on. As you swim toward the left bank, you realize you must make a decision. Should you go to San Francisco, as Aberdeen urged, or does the fact that Mayday is here mean Zorin is probably in France too? Should you go to his headquarters right here in France and confront him? The choice is yours. If you choose to go to Zorin's headquarters in France, turn to page 20. If you choose to go to San Francisco, turn to page 29. Fine.
Do you even need to ask?
I have a feeling we're going to San Francisco, am I right?
Yes, we are.
We're going to San Francisco on page 29.
And by the way, just in case our listeners have forgotten, Eric and I did not read this book beforehand. I read it a very, very long time ago as a kid. So since that time, haven't touched it. So this is all new to us again.
I've never seen these before. I didn't even crack it open when I got the book for this episode. I was like, nope, leaving it. I'm not even touching it. And so here we go. The flight to San Francisco is long and unsettling. You have so little to go on in this case. You quickly inspect the inventions Q has supplied for you. A comb that's really a knife. A watch that's really a bomb. A camera designed as a calculator. Good old Q. Enjoy your stay in San Francisco, offers the attractive flight attendant when the long fight is finally over. Thank you, you reply absently. Oh, you're welcome, she says brightly. And then with a smile she adds, you should come to San Francisco more often. All the best people come here. That's the coded message M told you to expect from your contact. But it makes no sense. The flight attendant was with you on the entire flight. Why didn't she come forward sooner? If you think the flight attendant is just being friendly, turn to page 33. If you think the flight attendant is your contact, turn to page 35. Find your fate.
Now, I'm wondering, a camera designed as a calculator and a watch that's a bomb, doesn't that seem backwards to you?
I mean, well, because they already have calculator watches. Like, that's a thing already. So Q's got to step it up a little bit and make something different, I guess. I'm not sure why you need a secret calculator, though. Like, yeah, you need a secret bomb and a secret knife. You don't need a secret calculator. I mean, if you need a calculator, just carry a calculator. Who cares?
Yeah. But in any case, coded messages are made coded messages for a reason. So, and it does seem kind of like an odd phrase to use if someone's just being friendly. So I'm going to assume the flight attendant is my contact. And I'm going to turn to page 35.
All right. Perhaps we could discuss your feelings about San Francisco in the airport lounge, you suggest. I'd like that very much, she said seductively. Good.
Score.
Good, I'll meet you in half an hour, you say. A few minutes later, you're sitting at a table in the airport lounge. When the flight attendant finally appears, she's out of breath. I think I'm being followed, she says quickly. And so I wanted to spend more time with the famous James Bond. Anyway, she continues, my message is simple. You're to check into the Caprice Hotel and then meet a CIA man named Chuck Lee at 8 o'clock in a Chinatown restaurant called How Lowe's. He's your next contact. Will you be all right, you ask, with concern? I'll be fine. I've got a private jet waiting for me. It's you I'm worried about, Mr. Bond. Call me James, and you can call me anytime. What's your name? I just told you. Anytime.
Wow.
Stop flirting and get back to business. Turn to page 51, it says.
Oh, come on. You age-appropriate audience, you.
This one isn't as bad as the last one for that, though, you gotta say. So far, anyway.
Well, not yet.
You have just checked into the Caprice Hotel. Pacing the floor in your elegant hotel room, you wait impatiently for evening to come so you can rendezvous with Chuck Lee of the CIA. Finally, though, you sit down in a plush, overstuffed chair. That's when the jet lag catches up to you. You close your eyes and rest. Did you drift off to sleep for just a few seconds? Or was it minutes? Or even hours? You wake up with a start, sensing something different in the room. Your sixth sense for danger has warned you, but is it too late? Slowly, you look around your hotel room, muscles tense, ready to spring into action. Then you see it, a small piece of paper that's been pushed underneath the door. You relax, let out a breath, then pick up the piece of paper and read your message. 007, urgent, I must talk with you regarding Z. The note is signed with a single letter, P. At the bottom is an address in the area of San Francisco known as the Mission District. It is now almost time to meet Chuck Lee in Chinatown. His information could be crucial, but then again, you might learn something valuable from this mysterious P. You have a difficult decision to make. In fact, this decision could be a matter of life or death. Yours. If you choose to meet Chuck Lee, turn to page 38. If you choose to meet P, turn to page 45. It's time to find your fate.
Well, wise people never turn down the opportunity to pee, so I'm going to turn to page 45. That was lame, I know. But I'm going to turn to page 45.
All right. You step out into the narrow hallway overlooking the hotel's indoor courtyard 22 stories below. You reach the glass elevator. In the reflection, you catch a quick glimpse of a dark figure behind you. You start to turn, but it's too late. Powerful hands come from behind and clasp you by the throat. You twist in their vice-like grip and catch a glimpse of Mayday! Your valiant attempts to free yourself are futile. She is much too strong. The knowledge that she literally holds your life in her hands makes Mayday smile. It would be simple for her to strangle you now, but that would be too easy. Instead, she lifts you up over her head as easily as if you were a toy and prepares to hurl you over the railing. If you dare, turn to page 91. Well, there's no other choices, so I guess we're turning to page 91.
We're daring.
As you dangle over the edge, you know that death is near, but still your mind considers the possibility of survival. Your first thought is to reach in your jacket pocket and pull out Q's parachute handkerchief. Uh-oh, wrong jacket. There's a fountain in the lobby. If you angle your body just right, you may be able to save yourself by landing in the pool. Or there's even a chance, if the timing is just right, that you could grab a hold of the fancy glass elevator that's beginning its ascent in the corner near where Mayday holds you suspended. You have 1/10 of a second to commit to one of these long shots, or it will be too late because Mayday throws you over now. Which is it? Do you try to sail toward the swimming pool? If so, turn to page 27. Find out if your dive is going to make a big splash. Do you try to grab onto the elevator? If so, turn to page 31 and find out if your chances of survival are going up. Find your fate.
You just don't know how deep that fountain is. So I'm going to grab onto the elevator on page 31.
All right, here we go. You see that the elevator is on its way up and you're on your way down. Somehow, you make a desperate lunge and reach out for a shiny brass ornament on the front edge of the otherwise all-glass elevator roof. If you can get your hands on it, and if it doesn't snap off, you might actually survive against impossible odds. Your right hand grasps the ornament and holds it. The piece of brass bends but doesn't break. Your arm is nearly wrenched from its socket. The pain is awful, nearly unbearable, and your whole arm turns numb from the shock. Without any feeling in your hand, it begins to slip off the ornament. Hold on, cries a woman passenger, looking up at you from inside the glass elevator. Love to, madam, you gasp in reply. But with that, you lose your grip and slide right down across the glass elevator in front of the horrified eyes of the woman passenger. She screams, "Surely this is the end!" Turning to page 4. No, it's not quite the end of you, yet. There's a steel bar running along the bottom of the elevator car and you grab it with both hands. The elevator suddenly changes direction. It's going down. You'll have to jump when it gets close to the first floor. This won't be easy, because when it gets to the last 3 floors, it's enclosed in a dark shaft. It will be nearly impossible to judge the distance to the ground in the dark. If you jump too soon, you'll be hurt, but if you wait too long, you'll be crushed under the elevator. You're going to have to judge the distance intuitively. Get ready. Not yet. Wait. Jump! Hold your breath and turn to page 40. Your timing is great. You let go of the elevator and jump. You land in the bottom of the shaft in one piece, then you roll into a somersault that takes you out of the way of the elevator as it stops inches away to let passengers out on the first floor. Hold the door, please, you say coolly as you climb up from beneath the elevator and squeeze out the doors. Don't be alarmed, madam, you say to the woman passenger who has witnessed all this. Just a routine safety check. You can't resist a laugh. But there's no time left for jokes. You've got to chase after Mayday. A moment later, outside the hotel, you spot her getting on one of San Francisco's cable cars. Without hesitating, you race to the cable car and climb on, only to find out that you and Mayday are completely alone. The cable car is deserted, but even more alarming is the fact that Mayday has a pistol pointed straight at your heart. Turn to page 1.
How the hell do you find a deserted cable car in San Francisco? I haven't even found one of those at like 11 at night. Anyway. Okay, 112.
Holding her pistol on you, Mayday ties you snugly to a pole in the center of the cable car. You've been very difficult to kill, Mr. Bond. You're like a cat, always landing on your feet. Seems to me, kitten, you're the one with the claws, you reply flippantly, trying your best to ignore the muzzle of her gun. Very funny, Mr. Bond, Mayday chuckles. She throws a switch and the cable car starts to move slowly towards a long, steep hill. And I have something funny to tell you. You see, this cable car is loaded with more than 100 sticks of dynamite. When they explode at the bottom of the hill, they'll blow you to pieces. You might land on your feet again, Mr. Bond, but this time the rest of your body won't be attached to them. Now, don't you think that's funny? Hysterical, you reply dryly. I'm sure I'll die laughing. Quick, before you reach the bottom of the hill, turn to page 102. Jumping off this swiftly moving cable car, Mayday waves and cries, "Goodbye, Mr. Bond. Enjoy your ride." The cable car is quickly picking up more speed. You have only seconds to save yourself. What are you going to do? The cable car is barreling toward the bottom of the hill at terrific speed. The wind is whistling through your hair, and that makes you think of your comb that's actually an electric knife. If you could just get a hand on it, you could cut through these ropes and get off the cable car before it's too late. You have just enough slack in the rope to work only one of your hands free. But is the comb in your right hip pocket or your left? You can't remember, and you don't have time to try them both. If you think the comb is in your right pocket, turn to page 49. If you think the comb is in your left pocket, turn to page 94. Find your fate.
On the one hand, when you go through mazes, the generic thing is a left-hand rule. You always turn left. On the other hand, we're in San Francisco, so I should trust the 49ers, shouldn't I? Go Niners. Going to page 49.
All right, let's see how that turns out for By forcing all the air out of your lungs, you get just enough slack in the rope to slip your right hand down into your right hip pocket. You feel something there and quickly pull it out. It's a comb! But where's the tiny switch that turns it into a knife? Then you realize the terrible truth. This is an ordinary plastic comb. Kaboom! Here's the bottom line. Max Zorin's plan to cash in on chips will succeed because you, Mr. Bond, you are cashing yours in right here. The end. Oh, we killed Bond twice. That's sad.
You've done that too.
Yes, that is true.
Can I kill him 3 times?
We can certainly try. You're going to go for left pocket?
Yeah, let's go for the left pocket.
Okay,
page 94.
That was 94. Yes, 94. All right, so let's say that the right pocket thing never happened. What are the odds that you'd have the special comb in one pocket and just another comb in the other pocket? Like, yes, the comb! Oh, crap, it's just a comb.
Damn it.
You've worked the rope loose enough. The question is the comb knife really in your left hip pocket? You reach in and touch your hotel room key, 2 quarters and a dime, an extra bullet for your pistol, and the comb! You pull it out, touch the minuscule switch that turns it into a knife, and then quickly cut the ropes. But now you've got a new problem. The cable car is speeding down the hill so fast that jumping off could be fatal. But you have no choice. You're almost at the bottom of the hill, and you'll never find the dynamite in time to defuse it. At least if you jump, you've got a chance. You close your eyes and leap off the speeding cable car. You better open your eyes or you won't find out what happened to you on page 24.
But if my eyes were closed, how would I read those instructions to turn to page 24?
Things that make you go, A Cadillac convertible drives up the street, passes the side of the cable car, and you land comfortably in its plush back seat. The driver isn't even aware that you're an unexpected passenger in his car. It is only when there is a huge explosion at the bottom of the hill that he stops and turns around to look down the street. But by then you have already rolled out of the car and flagged down a taxi. You jump in and give the cabbie the Mission District address from the small piece of paper that was pushed under your door. It's time you finally met this mysterious P. Turn to page 36. The taxi drops you off in front of an old house with boarded-up windows. The front yard is overgrown with tall grass, and the paint on the house is chipped and flaking off. It looks as if nobody has lived here for years. The front door is unlocked. You push it open, and it gives a loud, harsh squeak. So much for the element of surprise. You shrug your shoulders and call out, "Is anybody here?" The cold steel of a gun barrel touches the back of your neck. "Yes," comes a soft, accented voice. "There's somebody here, and if you make one wrong move, I will still be here, but you won't. Don't do anything rash. Just turn to page 47. You immediately recognize the accent as Russian. The voice also sounds familiar. Walk straight ahead into the living room, comes the order from behind you. It's only a few paces into the musty old living room, but by then you place the soft voice. "How are you, Pola?" you ask as you boldly turn towards the face and the gun of the beautiful Pola Ivanova. She smiles and said, "Just fine, James. I've missed you." "I didn't think a hardened KGB agent could miss anyone." "With a gun, no," she says, lifting the barrel menacingly to point it between your eyes. "But with the heart, yes, when the man is James Bond." "We had fun in Rome, didn't we," you say, remembering your impossible romance with the Soviet agent. "Yes, and in London, Vienna, and Rio," she adds. "Why are you here, Pola?" you ask. "Same reason you are. Zorin." "What does the KGB have to do with Max Zorin?" "Nothing anymore," she replies. "That's the problem. And that is why you and I are on the same side for once." You look at her dubiously. "I don't know what you're talking about." Turn to page 48. "Zorin was working with the KGB," she explains, "but now he wants all the microchip production for himself. The KGB has decided that Mr. Zorin is a dangerous threat, and he's a threat not only to us, but to you as well. We can work together on this one," she says, adding invitingly, "like Rome, London, Vienna, and Rio. We can have San Francisco together," she says, looking at you with her deep, dark eyes, and with her pistol still pointed at your head. If you decide to cooperate with Pola, turn to page 111. If you decide you can't cooperate with Pola, turn to page 64. Find your fate.
Well, you age-appropriate audience, you. Let's face it, if Bond was faced with this decision, he would be turning to page 111 without even thinking, so...
So here we go. Let's trust the Russian. I mean, we've trusted her before, right? In all those places. If I'm going to work
with Pola... Yes, all those places.
All the places. "If I'm going to work with you, Pola," you say forthrightly, "there are 2 things you'll need to do. The first is that you'll have to stop waving that gun in my face. And the second is that you'll have to give me every scrap of information you have on Zorin and his plans." She lowers the pistol and smiles at you. "You see, I have shown my good faith by not killing you, but I cannot give you the evidence I have on Zorin. If I did, you would no longer need to work with the KGB, with me, anymore." "You're as clever as you are beautiful, Pola. I'm impressed. You've figured out all the angles." She looks up at you, clearly enjoying the compliments. "I'm going to like working with you again," she whispers. You put an arm around her waist and draw her close, bending your head down to her lips and say softly, "For old time's sake," and then you give her a long, passionate kiss. While kissing her, though, your free hand searches through her bag. When your fingers touch a tape cassette, you carefully pick it up and slip it into your pocket. "How lovely, James," she says breathlessly. "You haven't changed." And then she points her pistol at you again and says, "Now, no, you haven't changed at all. Now give me back the cassette or I'll blow your brains out." And then we turn to page 73. Cassette tapes. How quaint. Reluctantly, you reach into your pocket and hand the tape back. "I should have known better than to trust you," Pola angrily exclaims. "I'm leaving. You're on your own, just the way you always want it." At the door, she stops and turns to scowl at you and announce, "If Max Zorin takes over all the microchip production in the world, it'll be your fault. Yours." Could you have made a mistake by not trusting her? Turn to page 60 and find out. Once you're sure that Pola has left, you smile and pull a cassette from your pocket. You switched cassettes on her. You have her cassette and she has yours. You hope she likes string quartets. After you leave the old house, you quickly locate a car rental agency and order an automobile with a tape player in it. On your way back to your hotel, you listen to a bugged conversation between Max Zorin and Mayday. I'm using the oil wells I recently took from Old Man Sutton to pump water into the Hayward Fault. Zorin's voice is clearly recognizable. In time, that would cause a major earthquake, but I've got something much bigger in mind. You see, I'm tunneling under the San Andreas Lake. At your main strike mine, Mayday asks? Exactly. And when I blow up the lake, it will send billions of gallons of water crashing down through the tunnels directly into the San Andreas Fault itself. And the Silicon Valley lies right between the Hayward Fault and the San Andreas Fault. So when I blast under the San Andreas Lake, it will rupture both fault lines and swallow the Silicon Valley. Every microchip company in Northern California will go under, and then I'll step in and become the world's major supplier. Now you know Zorin's evil plan, but can you stop it? Let's find out on page 67. As soon as you get back to your hotel, you hurry to your room. There are a lot of calls you must make, and you've got to make them fast before the Silicon Valley disappears along with all the people who live and work there. But when you reach your room, you notice the doors are slightly open. Somebody is in there waiting for you. Is it Polanova with her crew of KGB henchmen? Or is it Mayday, who has come for another try at throwing you over the railing? No matter who it is, if it's a fight they want, you're ready to give it to them. On page 80.
Dun dun.
You dive through the door, roll across the living room, break the leg off a chair, and then come up ready to do battle. Facing you across the room is an astonished surprise, and in astonished surprise is an attractive blonde whom you've never seen before. Do you always enter a room like that, Mr. Bond? Asked the beautiful woman. Only when I've missed my afternoon tea. I get a little irritable. I'm sure you understand. The blonde laughs with genuine amusement, but you can see the tension in her eyes. My name is Stacy Sutton, she offers, holding out her hand, and it was a Mr. Chuck Lee who told me about you. He also said that you were coming here to investigate Max Zorin. He thought I might be able to help you. You take her hand and shake it. Nice to meet you, Miss Sutton. Call me Stacy, she says warmly. My pleasure, you reply with a bow, and then you remember Stacy Sutton. That was the name Aberdeen mentioned right before he was killed, and Zorin mentioned Old Man Sutton on the tape. The pieces of the puzzle are coming together now. All you need is time. On page 86.
Dun dun dun.
You better tell me everything you know right now, you begin. Time may be very short. Time is short, Mr. Bond, Stacy replies. In fact, it has almost run out. Max Zorin took over my father's oil wells in an illegal business deal. He has been using our wells to pump water into his old mineral mines, and he's just about finished. Do you know what that will do? You remember Max Zorin's words on the tape. Yes, you say slowly. I know exactly what it will do. It will eventually cause an earthquake on the Hayward fault line. How do you know? She gasps in surprise. Zorin told me himself, you explain cryptically. But that's only half of Zorin's plan, and if what you say is true, the other half of the plan will be carried out any minute. I've got to get into his headquarters at the main strike mine, and it's got to be now. You jump up to leave. Hey, you're not going without me, Mr. Bond, she says defiantly. Max Zorin ruined my father, and I insist on helping you in any way I can. Besides, I was raised around oil rigs and mines. You're going to need me to show you around. She's got a point, but her inexperience could get you killed. The choice is yours. If you decide to take Stacy Sutton with you, turn to page 96. If you decide not to take Stacy Sutton with you, turn to page 98. It's time once again to find your fate.
I think Bond would take the blonde, so I'm going with page 96.
Seems about right. I mean, you figure he took along Christmas Jones for no reason whatsoever. You figure he's going to take Stacy with him. So we are taking Stacy Sutton.
We are taking Stacy Sutton.
So turning to page 96 then. 96. There it is. Okay. In your rented car, Stacy drives you towards Zorin's huge mining complex south of San Francisco. Before you get there, though, you pass a long convoy of trucks all loaded with explosives. Obviously, Zorin is about ready to make his move. A few minutes later, you tell Stacy to stop the car on a hill overlooking Zorin's main strike mine. The scene below looks like something out of a war movie. We'll never get past the main gate in this car, Stacy says quietly as she looks down at Zorin's armed guards. They'd cut us down in a second. Quick, you order. Pull over into the bushes off the road so we can't be seen. I've got an idea.
I bet he does.
Expressed on page 5. While you wait in the bushes, the convoy of trucks loaded with dynamite heads your way. What are you going to do? Stacy whispers as the first truck rumbles and then disappears down the hill. I'm not going to do anything, you reply with a smile. You are. Me, she chokes. You wanted to help, didn't you ask? Well, here's your chance. Stacy looks a bit uncertain now, but says, okay, what's the strategy? The last truck in this convoy is our target, you explain. The driver probably won't stop if he sees a man in the road waving him down, but he just might stop if a beautiful blonde suddenly staggers out of the bushes and collapses in the road. What if he doesn't stop? She wants to know. What if he runs me over? Then we'll have to think of something else. Turn to page 63. There's the Bond we know and love, right? The last truck comes into view. Don't worry, you say to Stacy after you give her a gentle kiss. I've never known a man who wouldn't stop to help a damsel in distress. The time has come. The truck is only 30 feet away. Are you still sure the driver will stop and not run over Stacy? If you decide to go through with this plan, turn to page 32. If you decide to scrap this plan and try another one, turn to page 37. It's time to find your fate.
Well, it's a crappy plan. On the other hand, we spent enough page time coming up with it that I think the author has intended to set you up to think, no, this is going to be a bad plan, scrap it, and then you'll die. So I'm going to go through with the crappy plan on page 32.
All right, going through the crappy plan. Page 32 it is. You're convinced your plan will work. No. Now? Stacy asks as the headlights from the last truck sweep up near the top of the hill. Now. She takes a deep breath, then bursts out of the bushes, waving her arms like a windmill, shouting, Stop! I need help! Stop! Without pausing to see if the driver has spotted her, Stacy stumbles all the way into the middle of the road, and then, still shouting, she starts running right towards the oncoming truck. You can't tell if it's part of her performance or just sheer fright, but Stacy appears to faint. She hits the road, but will the truck driver hit his brakes? Turn to page 18 to find out. You close your eyes. You don't want to see this, but instead of the expected crunch, you hear the sound of squealing tires burning into pavement. The driver has slammed on his brakes. When you open your eyes again, you see a big man in green overalls climbing down from the truck cabin to the road. Hey lady, what's the matter with you? He demands as he approaches Stacy. Just then you tap him on the shoulder from behind. Hey, what? Sorry, you say. We need to borrow your truck. You knock him out with a judo chop to the neck, then put on his overalls. Stacy, are you all right? You call out. Me? She asks, now sitting on the road, bathed in the beam of the truck's headlights. I never felt better. You grin at her and say, Get in and stay low. My pleasure. I'd rather be in the truck than under it. Now it's on to Zorin's mind. Turning to page 52. Wearing the green overalls of the unconscious trucker, you drive down the hill towards Zorin's heavily guarded main strike mine. Stay down, you tell Stacy as you pull up to the front of a sentry at the front gate. Thought you were lost, sneers the guard. You're the last truck. What took so long? One of the boxes in back shifted when I turned a corner, you lie. Figured I'd better stop and check it out. Now we're turning to page 53. Oh.
Next page. You were on 52.
All right, he says. Drive on and start unloading right away. The boss wants all the dynamite out and set within the next hour. You drive through, and just as you're about to park, you spot a small office with lots of wires leading in through the open door and windows. Is that the place where the main detonator is located? If you and Stacy sneak in there, you might be able to set a trap for Zorin. Suddenly, you see Mayday heading into one of the tunnels. You have to make a quick choice. Do you want to try and sneak into the office, or follow Mayday and see if she leads you to Zorin? If you choose to make a try for the office, turn to page 97. If you choose to follow Mayday, turn to page 58. Once again, we must find your fate.
Let's go after Mayday.
We're going to follow Mayday. Turning to page 58. Mayday disappears into a tunnel. With a quick turn, you maneuver the truck so it blocks the mine entrance. You pull the blanket off Stacy and say, Stay low and get out on my side. The truck is our cover. Come on. Both of you race deep down into the dimly lit mine tunnel after Mayday. It seems as if you must be at least a mile underground when you spot your nemesis standing on top of an enormous pile of explosives. At least 6 truckloads of dynamite must be stacked together in this one location alone, and Mayday is doing the final wiring that will connect these explosives to a detonator. You were wrong about Mayday meeting Zorin down here, but now it's too late to do anything about it. Mayday has spotted you. Turning to page 70. With sparks flying all around her from unfinished wiring job, Mayday leaps down from the mountain of dynamite lands right in front of you. You won't escape me this time, Mr. Bond, she says as she reaches out to grab you. Stay back, you warn Stacy. Then, with lightning-quick hands, you snatch Mayday's outstretched arm, sidestep, and twist her wrist behind her back in a classic arm lock. Except she untwists her arm by doing a perfect backflip. Facing you now, with her arm free, she picks you up with both hands and slams you down into the side of the pile of explosives. The wind is knocked out of you, and you can't get up. Mayday picks up a boulder from the side of the tunnel and throws it down at you. At the last second, you roll out of the way, and the huge rock lands with a heavy thud on the ground, just inches from your head. You stagger to your knees, and Mayday kicks you in the stomach, doubling you over. She's about to kick you in the head when Stacy tries to tackle her by the legs, but Mayday easily pushes her aside. You're completely defenseless as Mayday's big boot is poised to crack your head wide open. Turning to page 108. As Mayday's boot swings towards your head, a massive explosion rocks the tunnel, and Mayday falls over on top of you. Zorin started, she screams angrily, pounding her powerful fists into the ground. The swine is blowing up the tunnels, even though I'm still down here. Mayday, can't you see? Zorin doesn't care if you live or die. Tell me how to stop him. You're right, she says with a terrible fury. He's betrayed me. Then you'll help me? Another explosion, closer this time, rocks the ground. It's probably hopeless, but yes, I'll help you, she says. What's going on? Stacy cries, crawling over to you. Zorin is blowing up the tunnels deeper down toward the fault line, Mayday tells her. He's going to do it in steps or else all the tunnels might collapse. After he's done that, though, he'll hit the button that connects with the main detonator. That will bring the entire San Andreas Lake above us crashing down right into the fault and trigger the earthquake. Then we've got to get to the main detonator before he pushes that button, you exclaim. I'll take you to it, Mayday offers. But will you get there in time? We'll find out on page 92. This way, Mayday cries as she races ahead in a small collecting tunnel. It's a steep climb, she says, but it's the shortcut to the top, and the detonator is right near where we'll come up out of the tunnel. Then let's go, you agree. The three of you struggle up the sharp incline. It's almost like climbing straight up, but if taking this route saves you even 1 minute, it'll be worth it. Up ahead, Stacy shouts. There's the opening. She's right. You climb into a huge cavern near the San Andreas Lake and find the detonator nearby, wedged under a slab of solid rock. You take a good hard look at all the wires connected to the detonator. It's clear that there are 3 main charges that are yet to go off. If you can switch the wires, perhaps you can change the order of the explosions and blow up the tunnels where Zorin is now. If you switch the wrong wires, however, you'll blow up yourself, along with Stacy and Mayday, and you'll probably start the earthquake that will ultimately destroy the Silicon Valley.
No pressure.
Which wires should you switch? The 2 wires on the left side of the detonator, or the 2 wires on the right side of the detonator? Choose wisely, or die. If you switch the wires on the left side, turn to page 99. If you switch the wires on the right side, turn to page 106. Find your fate.
I'm pretty sure it was the left side that was the correct choice before. I've already forgotten. However, if it was the left side that was the correct choice before, then it's not going to be the left side again. So I'm going to say we're going to do the right.
All right, we're switching the wires on the right side on page 106. You grab hold of both wires on right side of the detonator, and with the intention of pulling them out at the same time. As you're about to tug them out, though, Stacy nervously asks, "Are you sure those are the ones you want?" Before you can answer, another explosion down the tunnels makes the ground quiver beneath your feet. In a minute, maybe less, you reply. It may not matter which wires I choose because we'll all be dead. And with that, you pull out the wires, and nothing happens. So far, so good, you whisper. Suddenly, the detonator starts making a ticking sound. Something's wrong, Mayday cries. Let's turn to page 81 to find out what that is. You ignore Mayday and calmly reverse one of the wires. Then you start to reverse the second wire. "Don't do it!" cries Stacy. "You'll blow us up!" shouts Mayday. The ticking sound fills your ears, but you continue to reattach the second wire to the other terminal, and suddenly, kaboom!
Nicely done.
The main strike mine headquarters explodes. Zorin is dead. The shockwave at the ground level causes the tunnels below to collapse, filling themselves and sealing off the San Andreas Fault. You have saved Silicon Valley. You really did it, Stacy cries joyfully. Sometimes, you say with a sly smile. You just have to know which strings to pull. The end.
Yay!
So only 2 deaths and 1 victory. So I think we're tied now.
Yep.
we both killed Bond twice. Both times, the first time came fairly quickly, and the second one took a little bit longer. But ultimately, we saved the day.
And we didn't break the book this time.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That last one had a boo-boo in the book. We were like, where's this supposed to be? So that was Strike It Deadly, or James Bond in Strike It Deadly by Barbara and Scott Siegel. This is a Find Your Fate book from Ballantine Young Adult. If you can find yourself a copy of these books, they're great fun, even just going back as an adult and reading through these things. I've always loved the Choose Your Adventure genre type of books, so it's fun times.
Yeah, definitely way more fun than the 2 Ian Fleming books we had to read before this. I'll be honest with you.
Yes, I will agree. Yes, these Find Your Fate books more entertaining than The Spy Who Loved Me and even The Man with the Golden Gun.
Yep, and there are still 2 more opportunities to find our fate sometime in the future. But what episodes those 2 books will show up in, who knows? You will just have to keep listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast and find your fate. But for now, anything else you want to say about the books we've read today?
Only that, again, the only one of the 3 that I would highly recommend is the Find Your Fate book. So take that for what it's worth.
Indeed, and good luck finding it. It has been out of print for many years, but you still can find them on Amazon in the secondary marketplace. It's kind of a crapshoot with these because it depends on who's selling them at what time. There have been some times where I've seen these for as little as 50 cents. And then there was another time where I saw one of these books at $40 for its cheapest version. So just keep checking, and hopefully eventually, if you're interested in any of these books and they are a fun read, then you'll find one at a reasonable price.
I also recommend, if you have any used bookshops in your local area, don't be afraid to go in and ask if they've got it, first of all, and then ask them if they can keep their eye out for it if they don't have it. A lot of used bookstores, especially the bigger chains of them, will be able to put your name in the system, and when one of these books comes across, they'll shoot you an email or a call and say, hey, we've got that book you were looking for in. So that might be another way to get it if you can't find it online, but definitely highly recommended. Definitely worth checking it out.
Indeed. But that is going to do it for this episode of Her Majesty's Secret Podcast. We hope you will join us again next time for yet another episode on the Four-Eyed Radio Network as you find your fate. In the meantime, I'm Ziggy Berkeley.
And I'm Eric Dewey.
And you've been listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on The Fern.
This has been another great presentation by the Four-Eyed Radio Network. You can find more information at foureyedradio.com.